Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Fireside Chat. We are talking all about automation in staffing. What can it do? What's missing? How to drive ROI? Really the works. And I am joined by three hopefully very familiar faces to all of you. Kate Rutherford, Vice President of Talent Technology at Advanced Group, Rob Mann, Regional Sales Manager at Kylo Partners, and Matt Dichter, VP of Sales from Staffing Engine. Before we get started, let's just do a cheers. We are here. Hello,
cheers,
everyone.
Guys. Welcome to happy hour.
Welcome to happy hour.
It is 5 o'clock here.
That's true.
It is
true.
It's 2 p.m. on the West Coast, but we'll let it slide.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even needed to know that. For all they know.
Well,
all right. Well, we are really excited about this conversation. There's so much ground we're going to cover, and I will introduce each of our panelists here shortly. But before I do, just to give you a little bit of insight and teaser of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk about how the experience of automation impacts different audiences. So everyone from the candidate experience to the recruiter, to the client, to even tech stack strategy and how to really formalize adoption within your company, and then just overall what's working, how to make it successful, how to know where to go. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. And I will say that this group right here has covered nearly 20 brands in the staffing industry. So whether that is SaaS, staffing firms, I mean, just kind of in and around this space. So you're getting really a robust set of knowledge here. So why don't I go ahead and jump in with intros in case these are some new faces to you, or even one of these faces is new to you. So Kate Rutherford is a staffing veteran turned recruitment technology executive who's currently serving as the Vice President of Talent Technology at Advanced Group. She's got over 15 years in the staffing industry and has given her unique perspective on how to evaluate, implement, and deploy recruitment technology that leads to a lot of really epic things like increased ROI, workflow efficiency, and an improved candidate experience, which is all the buzz and very important right now. She grew up in New Jersey, but she currently lives in Orlando with her husband, daughter, and a few four-legged friends who are currently locked out of the room she's in. So we'll see if they make an appearance. And she's currently binge watching Suits. So an element to connect with Kate on if you need to know. Now we've got Rob Mann, again, Regional Sales Manager with Kylo Partners. Rob is a former history teacher. Did you guys know that? I feel like everyone should know that.
I knew that trivia question.
He then turned physician recruiter and has now been for the last number of years a SaaS account executive. And he's worked with some of the leading Bullhorn marketplace solutions and really enjoys helping Bullhorn users get the most out of their tech stack. You are probably familiar with this if you are watching today's Fireside Chat, that he co-hosts the You Own the Experience podcast. Shout out to Lauren Jones, who's the other host there.
That was not planned.
The Jersey folk, don't worry.
The Jersey folk. And that podcast focused on the intersection of your sales and your recruiting teams and technology. And now, ironically, Rob also grew up in New Jersey and moved to South Florida in 2005, where he lives with his wife and four-legged pup, Layla. Am I saying that right?
Layla. We say Layla.
Yeah. Layla. So in case you are one of those people who has made that transition from New Jersey to Florida, because apparently it happens, you have people to talk to.
I'm binge watching Billions too, by the way. So
okay.
Billions is great.
Yes.
Okay. I love that. Matt, tee up what you're binge watching. I'm going to want to hear it. And then Matt is the VP of Sales at Staffing Engine, which is a recruitment acceleration platform focused on enriching the candidate and client experience, while also enabling recruiters to work faster and more efficiently. And he focuses on Staffing Engine really to help staffing customers, elevate everything they're doing to ensure productivity and take the company from startup to rocket ship, which I love that phrase. Matt grew up in the Boston area, got his bachelor's degree at Penn State, found a home at Bullhorn prior to joining Staffing Engine. So you may know him from his Bullhorn days. And while he was there, he moved out west, spent about 8.5 years helping staffing agencies from coast to coast achieve their tech and their digital transformation goals. And he lives in San Diego with his girlfriend, Jenny, in Pitbull Blue. And he's a diehard sports fan, and he's currently binge watching what?
I just finished Better Call Saul, and I just started the new Game of Thrones, House of Dragon.
There you go.
Okay, you guys are
hopefully the new Game of Thrones ends better than the last one ended.
Yes. And by the way, Blue is in the room. So
Blue's in the room. We've got Blue in the background there. He's taking a nap.
that's my
We've
boy.
also got my brand spanking, well, it's not new. It's been sitting on my desk for a while, but I teed up my podcast speakerphone just for you guys. So
Woohoo.
hopefully
Taking
it'll
more
come
time
across
for
loud and clear.
Well, if you guys want to know what I'm binge watching, it is so hardcore. It's Iron Chef. So
Ooh.
Our chef's great.
I'm all about it right now. It's been so
I've-
fun. So if you are joining us today, you are in for a treat. As you can see, you probably know these personalities already. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into just this topic of the candidate experience. So we are opening Pandora's box. I would love to hear wisdom and insight on what you guys have experienced around the candidate experience and how it's changed through automation and technology in the last even 5 years. Who wants to go first?
Ladies first. Kate, you want to
Oh,
rock this
me.
out?
Let's put Kate on the hot.
Okay, all right.
It's not the hot seat. This is what she does for a living.
Normally I'm a little warmed up.
Oh.
Maybe I need another sip of wine. So I used to have a manager. This is way back. And he used to tell war stories about what recruiting was like in his times. And it was phone book and fax machines and all that stuff. So I will date myself too, because I've been in staffing and recruiting. My first staffing job was working a desk at Robert Half in 2006. And I don't even think we had our website integrated with our ATS at that point. And it was the job boards, and I don't even think we had a texting platform. So to see the evolution of technology within the staffing industry, since that point of time, but I would say more specifically over the past 3 to 4 years, as it related to COVID, I think that was a huge push to get these technologies out to market and into the hands of different staffing and recruitment companies. I mean, the sky's the limit. Who would have ever thought that you could automate processes and have recruiters really focus on building the relationships, which is really the core of staffing and recruiting and building your book of business. It really comes down to the relationship. And technology just has evolved so much to allow recruiters to actually do that and not have to worry about on those minutia details that are important, getting from the candidate from applying to your job all the way to getting on the job. But yeah, it's been really, really fun, and it's not stopping, which is even more exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love what I've heard said of a third of the time is toward data entry, a third of the time is spent toward prospecting, and a third of the time is spent in the human stuff realm.
Yeah.
And anybody who falls into recruiting, if there's a reason that they're in it and they stay in it, it's because of the human stuff and not the other pieces. So if we use technology to automate the other components, it creates a better experience for everybody.
We have to talk about that with staffing agencies all the time, because they think that automation and AI and all this smart technology replaces the recruiter's touch. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. We're trying to replace the mundane tasks in salespeople and recruiters' day so that they can continue having as many conversations with candidates and clients as possible.
Yeah. Well, and how often too do you hear, Matt, candidates get frustrated because they get on the phone with a recruiter and the recruiter doesn't know or hadn't had time to prep for the conversation. And the first couple minutes of their time is wasted. And we all know time is a precious commodity. So your tool just helps to bridge that gap and tee up that successful conversation so they can get off to the right start.
Well, here's the thing. Every candidate has their own preferred method of communication, right? So if you go back 20, 30 years to staffing agencies, it was brick and mortar. It was candidates either coming into the office or you called them and it happened over the phone. And there's still a lot of agencies who operate by banging the phones. But then email came along and email became prevalent. I'm fortunate enough to work with the founders of Text Us. And there's been really great companies like Text Us and Sense that have brought SMS into the staffing and recruiting and helped to automate that. And now you've got live chat, AI chat bots that are emerging as a new form of communication. I'm sure there's going to be something else that's even new soon. And you've got these millennials and Gen Zers who, because they grow up on their cell phones and they grow up texting and chatting with bots, they don't want to start on the phone. They want to start on their preferred method of communication. And once they've built that relationship electronically, then they'll move to a phone conversation.
Yeah, Rob, I'm curious to hear your perspective coming from an education background, and then moving into recruiting. Well, and actually, Kate spent time in recruiting. I've spent time in recruiting. Like, it's nice to have some of that experience when it wasn't fully technologically driven, because you can see the benefit. But Rob, especially from the education side to now staffing, I'm just curious if you have any insights there.
In terms of the candidate experience, I think for me the biggest thing is always to think about like what Matt said, right? Like how do they want to be communicated with? So I used to staff physicians when I got started, which is a maybe dramatically different thing than talking to accounting and finance or even travel nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And they would work 7 to 7, the ER doctors I would work with. So I would work, I would stop working at 5 and then start working again at 7 to 8
Wow.
to text with them or email them when they were getting off shift. So usually like my sweet spot was sometimes, even like the PM doctors, like somewhere between 5P to 7P to talk to them before they went on their night shift, which I love night shift doctors because they usually got paid more and you get billed more. But let's be honest. And so you had to text with them first to open the conversation. But I honestly, my favorite form of communication with somebody is Twitter, which forms almost like a chat. It's almost like a chat bot. So if I need customer success, I go to Twitter first. And then try and figure out the best way. But if there is a chatbot on the website, I am much happier, and I probably would be much happier answering all of the questions. And then from and this is moving into like the recruiter experience, I think you get this nice printout. Like Matt, no offense, we use Drift because we're a SaaS company.
Sure.
And we get a nice printout of what they want in front of us when we start the conversation, right? So like, it's not, we don't print it, but it's like, it's all in front of us.
Right.
And that creates a great experience because I can be like, hey, I know you this, and this. Like, is that all true? Okay, cool. What else do you need, or what else are you looking for?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, go ahead, Rob.
That's it.
Well, it's interesting because there's so many progressions in technology in our normal day-to-day lives that candidates expect it in staffing, and it has been delayed, right? Like, it's starting to become more normal now. But I think about, Rob, you mentioned like Twitter and just kind of that instant chat feature. For the first 2 years of my little guy's life, whenever we needed to take a flight, I wasn't able to add him as an in-lap infant when I bought Delta flights, right? Like whether through my Chase Sapphire card or through Delta, and I'd have to message them, and you get on the phone and it's like, a 4-hour wait, and
the
you
worst
time while watching a movie, and you're like, I'm never doing that again, even though I didn't actively have to do it a whole lot. But what I found with them is like, literally you send them a message on Facebook Messenger and you get a text, and they're like, cool, we'll get someone in touch with you. And within like 2 minutes, you're just like basically texting.
Yeah, there's an app.
Incredible.
There's an app called Snap Travel that lives on Facebook Messenger, and they consistently find the best rates on hotels I've seen, and it's all chatbot. Yeah, Snap Travel. Check it out. I used to book a hotel tonight, and Snap Travel replaced it for me.
That's good to
they
know.
find consistently the best ads, the best rates for hotels.
Nice.
Got it. I need that.
Yeah. So creating that environment where candidates can experience what they're experiencing everywhere else is really advantageous. And I think about Staffing Engine, and if you're not familiar, if somebody were to go on and apply for, a travel nursing role on a Friday, and your recruiters are done for the weekend and they're going to plug back in on a Monday, or let's say, right now when we're recording, there's a holiday coming up, like they'll plug back in on a Tuesday. That's like a stale time. Like, they don't know what's happening with their application. They could be applying to everywhere else, and someone might jump on over the weekend. Matt, can you share? And this conversation is not meant to be a plug for specific brands, everyone's reference, but so Matt's not expecting this, but I think it's important to hear about some of the technologies that are supporting the industry and how it's helping innovation. So like, in that experience, what would happen if someone applied?
Yeah. So just as an example, we were talking to a travel nursing firm a couple of days ago, and during their 8 to 5 recruiting hours, they have their lead flow dialed, right? Someone comes in, applies for a job, or hits a lead form, they funnel in, they have someone who responds to them within 30 seconds. However, after 5 p.m., when you go after hours, and they're travel nursing. So they, to Rob's point earlier, they have nurses rolling off shifts at all hours of the day and night. That time to respond goes down drastically, and some people don't get responded to the next morning. So tools like Staffing Engine, we're not the only ones out there, can layer on your website and social media to really enhance and provide that 24/7 candidate experience so that they get that immediate response and they can get the information they need through artificial intelligence. They don't have to wait for a recruiter to get back to them. It's ultimately the staffing agent's responsibility to supply all those channels of communication, because if that's the candidate's preferred method and your agency doesn't have that, they're going to go to the next agency and your competitor who does have it. So the other interesting thing that, you know, outside the realm of what we do, but I think applies a little bit to everything that all four of our companies do, is mobility and the mobile experience. And, you know, once candidates move from, you know, pre-hire to post-hire, you hear all the, you know, Bullhorn's working on it. Working's been doing this for years. Time saved, arrived. There's all kinds of worker apps. And the whole idea behind it is, rather than sending them back to your website or a website portal for, you know, uploading onboarding documents, credentials, time cards, pay stubs, you have an app that they download and then they have it on their phone, and it's a one-stop shop. The challenge, of course, is that a lot of these nurses, you know, not just nurses, any kind of candidate in any industry vertical, are oftentimes working with multiple staffing agencies. So, you know, what are they supposed to do? Download an app for each agency, and whose app's going to win out? The one with the best UI. And so it's I'm really interested in seeing where that goes, because agencies are going to have to do unique things to make their app stand out and be the one that contractor comes back to.
Right. Well, and if they can provide them additional value while they're out on contract, whatever that looks like, it would look completely different if it's in the healthcare space or light industrial professional. Hopefully that candidate or consultant is thinking about the staffing firm. So like when I think about, you know, all the brands that I use, right? Like Papa John's or Domino's, like I'm picking it because I like the certain type of pizza, but I would expect they'll have an app that tells me where my pizza's at and when it's getting to me.
Yeah. Well, if you stretch that into staffing and recruiting, and this is like super forward thinking, but a lot of these apps have the ability for individual contractors to like look at available jobs and pick up shifts. If I'm a contractor, I want an app that's going to actually recommend shifts based on my location that are going to be interesting to me. And that's where AI is going. I don't know that we're there yet. You know, I'll have to defer to my friends at one of the companies I just mentioned. But that's the dream, right? Being able to have an app that sends you a push notification that there's work that's relevant for you nearby. Do you want to go into that shift?
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because the way that would work, and I always think hospitality is the easiest form of that. So if you're a server, a bartender, etc., or you're looking for it, or a catering event, whatever, you know, it's a great use case for that, because they'll like say, hey, you just worked something similar. Do you want to go work these? And I think that's a great example of how that would work. I'm sure that could work, higher volume, light industrial stuff, but definitely hospitality is a great use. I think it's a strong use case for that.
I'd be interested to see too how different industries deploy that type of technology, because Matt brings up a great point. Is ease of use is one thing, right? Like we've all had updates pushed to our mobile phone and are frustrated because they move an app or they change an icon or they do something. So the same can be said as we start to look at technology and its growth in the next couple of years. But then I also look too at the candidates, like what type of experience are they looking for? I've worked in healthcare before, and nurses and therapists and even physicians, you know, they really crave that relationship piece with their recruiter. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how it plays out, because light industrial or hospitality might really run to that self-service model where they're like, hey, I just need to pick up a shift and I don't care who it is. I just need to make sure that I'm working next week. Whereas the healthcare industry or one of our businesses with Advanced Group, we have Advanced Clinical, our clinical consultants, they may crave that one-on-one experience that says, okay, this person's committed to my growth and my future and my development, and I can't get that from an app. Now, we can deploy technology to bridge the gap between recruiter and consultant, but they might want more than that on-demand experience. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how it all plays out within the industries and just the consultants that they serve.
Totally. However, even healthcare, like you're starting to see more and more healthcare I call them gig platforms pop up, but like Fusion just rolled out Fusion Marketplace. There's like a handful of other ones.
Snap Nurse has been like one of the best businesses in the country for
Vivian now, but like, the question as a staffing agency is, how do we leverage this sort of gig or shift-based technology while also ensuring they get that recruiter's touch that Kate just talked about?
Right. Well, just as an example, Parqa works with a HR consulting company, also healthcare consulting companies, but specifically for this example, HR consulting. So there's such a high touch on the personalization and one-on-one conversations. And we had a team that came to us that said that the recruiters were just like frustrated because they were capping out unless they were spending extra time on the weekends and like in the evenings when they'd want to be spending time with young families. They literally just weren't able to make more money unless they, like, to Rob's point earlier, were placing people out on contract that had higher bill rates. But beyond that, they couldn't just like double down and have more consultants in the field as easily because it's due to that restriction of like, I only have time to send out so many emails, so many calls, so many texts. And so we set them up with automation, Bullhorn automation, formerly Herefish, and their best recruiter went from having 25 I know there's a lot of fans here of that platform, myself included, but their best recruiter went from having 25 consultants in the field to having 50. And for their business model in like the one market they are in, that was huge. But the other thing that it did was it allowed all of the recruiters to elevate because we patterned it after the best, like the best case scenario of the best recruiter. When you layer that to every other recruiter, all of a sudden they have the cadence of messages going out and the cadence of text going out that are more personalized, and they're not like forgetting, they're not running out of time. The candidates feel better taken care of. Replacing more people. All around win.
You get the mass personalization, right? You get the amplification of the best recruiter and their workflows, and a lot of the times that ends up creating more of a personal touch, right? Like that best recruiter probably has, and has worked his or her butt off to get to a work. By the way, I didn't curse. Worked their butt off to get this workflow that has this highly personal yet scalable flow. So I was stealing this from Outreach when I would sell Herefish, but I would say, you want to make your 10 recruiters feel like 100.
Yeah. Well, and you've got two people that sold, between me and Rob, we both sold Herefish and Bullhorn automation. And regardless of whether
you used it,
and regardless of whether you're talking,
I sold it to both of y'all. Not that, but other things.
I mean, regardless, but here's the thing, back, again, going back 10 years, the only way that staffing agencies grew revenue was they would hire more recruiters, and that generated more revenue. But then you have automation tools like Bullhorn Automation, Sense, Work Llama. There's a bunch of automation tools out there that make the individual recruiter more productive. And that way, like when things hit the fan and you get into a recession, suddenly you freeze hiring and you're trying to figure out how you make your existing workforce more productive. Then you pull in a tool like that, and while it's an investment, the ROI far outweighs that investment if you deploy it the right way.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to say, I think that brings up a good point, though, that how much your technology and automation can be leveraged, not just for retaining your internal recruiters, because again, not every company has deployed this, but also as a recruiting tool, right? Because you've got two buckets of candidates. You've got the tenured recruiter that knows the game, knows what to do when they come in. So how can you bridge that gap between and get them to leave an existing book of business with existing commissions and set them up for quick success within your environment, but then also new recruiters who are new to the game. And we want them to focus on their word tracks and closing and building those relationships. I don't want them to have to worry about, remembering if they need to text their consultants for the timesheet or onboarding or something, of that nature. It's a critical piece to the process, but I can fill that with technology. I can't fill that relationship piece with technology.
You have the healthcare staffing background. How awesome is it having for credential collection, having the automated 15, 30, 45 day, text that's the credential collection?
Yeah. I will tell you before I had joined Advanced Group, we deployed HereFish in our environment, and it was a game changer. We were no longer in a position to where we had to consider our recruitment resources in order to say yes to contracts. And the contracts that came in during the COVID time period, we're not talking about onesie twosies. They were hundreds of people in a short
thousands of people. What are you talking about? You would deploy 3,000 people in a clip.
Listen, I'm not here to brag, Rob. So if you want to do that for me,
I'll brag for you. That was insane. When you told me that, I was like, what? What are you doing?
Yeah. And we were no longer in a position to where we were constrained by the recruiters in the field. We leveraged HereFish. We leveraged their survey capabilities, their notification capabilities. We had Able too. So we used automation within Able. And it just made it a much more seamless process. So, it was a really good spot to be in.
Quick note for anyone who doesn't know what Able does, Rob, who used to work at Able, what does Able do? I just want to make sure that people are hearing these resources and not having to write them down.
So it's no longer called Able, it's called Bullhorn Talent Platform, recently acquired by Bullhorn January 2022. It is a mobile first onboarding platform. So everything's built for your candidates to do everything via mobile. The recruiter or the team internally can create packets that go out to you preset them, and then you place somebody at company X, and company X packet exists and it ships out. Could be automated, could be just a manual click of a single button, add everything required and ship it, and then it comes back very neatly into Bullhorn. Or
it takes the paper process and helps automate it, digitize it.
There was a go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say the big thing that he just mentioned is that it's mobile first, right? Because most folks who are getting placed are wanting to access their documents on their mobile device, and a lot of other onboarding platforms prior to Able were desktop first, and kind of had I won't curse, but a not so great a mobile experience where you had to pinch and zoom, and then you click into the box, and it was just.
And they're important documents that you don't want to not process it well because you've got a bad user experience.
What I found, what this conversation is really fun is, without even trying, we've brought in, tech stack building, the importance of it to recruit internally, also to recruit externally, right? For your candidates, and going to market against other, as a sales tool, hey, here's my tech stack, here's the numbers I can deliver via that with statistics. And if you Bullhorn has a great stat in their grid report saying, most companies are planning on going through some digital transformation or implementation. But if you're not, if you just pay attention to the conversation, that conversation talked about the value across your entire business in the staffing and recruiting space of utilizing good technology, which relies on a number of things, which I'm sure we'll get into.
And I want to keep calling out the resources in case anybody just jumps over them. The Bullhorn Grid Report is a really, really good one. It's released annually, correct?
Yeah, it'll be released at the beginning of the year, in 2023, and possibly some additional resources coming from Bullhorn maybe soon.
Maybe Rob is not in the privy of anything that's going on. I'm sure Rob's
creating some intrigue and mystery there.
I wanted to hone in on a couple points. Kate, you referenced just the ability to retain your recruiters. And that is so true, because in the example that I gave, that number one recruiter, if somebody tries to pull her away and she asks about their tech stack, even if everything else feels right and they don't have the same support behind her, she would make half of what she has the potential to make right now. So it creates a really intense stickiness, but also, like you mentioned, Kate, it creates a really great onboarding experience. Because then a new recruiter is not trying to recreate the wheel or figure out the best way to do it in this environment. There's already best practices in place.
And I'll add another layer of psychology, because being a psych major, that's my favorite thing to do outside of talking automation with you guys. It also shows that the company is invested in continuous improvement. Technology, as we all know, it is not cheap. The investment, the deployment, the training, all of that stuff is not cheap. It comes at a price tag. And these can be small boutique companies that maybe aren't like the $1 billion Volts or Decos of the world. So,
Totally.
tech stack can be customized no matter what your EBITDA and revenue numbers are. But I think to the recruiter, it ultimately shows, hey, the company is invested in bringing in technology and leveraging technology to help me further my career, which is a testament to, again, leadership of the company and the company's culture.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I know that I think we're moving into the recruiter experience territory here. And so it is incredibly important to understand that your tech stack is a hiring tool. When I think about, when I've gone out to look for new jobs, one of the questions that I ask as a candidate is, what have you deployed for a CRM and other sales tools? And on the recruiting side, if I were looking for a job as a recruiter, you better believe I would ask them what they're using for their core platform. And if they weren't built on Bullhorn or Salesforce, I probably would have a hard time going with that company, because no matter what way you cut it, having good recruiting and sales tools helps sales and recruiters blow out their quota. And so I want to go to a company that's investing in their tech stack to make sure that I'm maximizing my potential. And so it is incredibly important when you look at, designing your tech stack, that you're doing so to make it attractive to people that you want to hire.
Right. And on that note, I was in a conversation with Lauren Jones and Bullhorn actually yesterday, talking about all the nerdy things that are coming down the pipeline. And I wrote down what she said. So if Lauren, if you're hearing this and I'm quoting this wrong, add it in the comments, but what I wrote down, she shared that companies in the staffing industry should be investing, like if they're in growth mode, 1.2 to 2.7% of revenue on technology. So 1.2 to 2.7% of revenue. And you think about historically, going back to a point that Kate, and I suppose everybody here has made of, in the past, when you wanted to grow your staffing firm, you just hired a ton more people and you just kept them coming in, and you just hope that solves the solution. But the challenge with that, beyond obvious factors of like turnover and the challenge to find great candidates today, is that there's actually fundamental things that have shifted in our industry. And yes, we talk about like the great reshuffle and all of that, but there's more people retiring. There's less people being born into the world. Like, I think about my dad was one of 8. I'm sure his parents were one of 12. And like
mine are both one of 7. So
yeah,
my side.
It's like whenever I've thought about like grandparent levels that I know, parent levels that I know, and then like peer levels that I know, it has like almost cut in half every time. And so you just think about there's just less people in the world to occupy the jobs currently as well. So it's not just this, oh, we need to move to technology because it's a good idea. It's also like, you're not going to be able to grow at scale if you're only relying on throwing more bodies at it. Like strategic hires are always going to be really important, and you're always going to need recruiters. I'm not advocating for getting rid of people.
Yep.
You can automate the pieces that the people are like, man, this is so manual. I do the same thing every single time. Like add technology to that layer. Rob, do you have thoughts here?
No, I don't.
Liar.
So I've been thinking about this stat, and this is for marketing automation, but it goes for technology, right? Like the biggest barrier to implementation, lack of expertise, makes up for a third of the reason why people don't make a change or implement marketing, in this case, marketing automation. But I got to imagine it's not too much different for any technology, right? So, if you're afraid, it's time to get uncomfortable, because I think you're gonna fall too far behind. And it was really interesting. 2020, there was a really large light industrial company that was still doing paper applications in like mid 2020, and they called Able and they were like, "Hey, we need you to fix this." And we were like, "Well, when do you want to fix?" And you know what they say, like they want it tomorrow. And you're like,
yesterday.
Yes.
How? Like, why weren't you planning for this 18 months ago then? Well, Well, because it wasn't painful. Well, no one predicted a global
Things get
pandemic,
painful quickly.
but things get painful very quickly. So, it's time to. If you're hearing this, you're probably someone who's already gone through this because you're following Kelli, myself, Matt, or Kate.
Yep.
So we got to imagine that you are trying to figure it out and making steps. But if you happen to hear this and you're not one of those people, it's a good time to start. And there's lots of there's more resources now for you than there's ever been before.
Yeah. And if you're not sure where to start, ping any of us on LinkedIn.
100%.
As you can tell, we're very passionate about this. So even if it's not something that our company offers, we are very willing to say, check out these two firms, check out
Listen,
there are resources.
I've kept a podcast alive solely talking about digital transformation for the staffing industry for 3 years. You got to know there's not a lot of people that are interested in that, but I keep it going because I know people need to hear what we're saying. So.
No, it's so true. I want to share an example here real quick. You think about how people are starting to implement automation more. I would say, 2 years ago, like Kate, when you were doing things at Loyal Source, it was like pretty early days for staffing firms. I remember
groundbreaking.
Like you guys showed up at a conference, like budget in hand, ready to make things happen a number of years ago. We were behind and realizing, okay, we actually weren't that behind. We were actually kind of like ready to roll. And so, what I see a ton now with people that I talk to with Parqa, helping companies with performance marketing and say, okay, how does your tech, your data, your marketing align to accomplish business goals and like that business consulting side and then marketing implementation to make that happen. So many people have workflows or automations or journeys or whatever you want to call it in your instance of your marketing automation tool. It's set up. You're like, cool, I've got my onboarding workflow. I've got my people are on contract, my redeployment, I have it set up. But when you actually get under the hood, you start finding things like this one particular healthcare staffing firm, quite large in size, had 100,000 inactive candidates in their database, like had not been touched in over a year. There was no attention going to them. So we set up a nurturing strategy to touch those individuals and basically re-engage them to the point of them saying, yeah, I want to have a conversation. And then the recruiter would pick up that conversation and bring it forward. In the course of 11 months, 2,100 of those became placements. And their average bill rates is 60 million in revenue, like 60 million in revenue. And the investment is like the cost of one person, and then it's evergreen.
Yeah.
So just like,
you didn't charge them enough.
You see the ROI calculator and like, you don't believe it, but like the companies that have deployed it the right way really do see some major return. There's no doubt about it. And if you think about like, if you do not deploy automation, it's impossible to make sure that you are following up with every redeployment candidate. You're not going to be able to get to everyone who applies and everyone who's scheduled to an assignment, especially if you're a higher volume. Like you can't get to it all if you're doing it manually. So deploy automation that helps with it.
Yeah.
I think too, there's a misconception that, we've got to go hard. Like, okay, this digital transformation, it's been a buzzword for a lot of years now, and we've got 4 applications, 5 applications. You can start small with 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you pick automation, pick a part of your business process and focus on that. Just start small. And to Rob's point, like, be okay doing it scared. There are so many resources out there, and I will shout this from the rooftops for as long as I'm in this industry and maybe even after. I would not have been as successful at Loyal Source had it not been for the people on this call, Lauren Jones, the partners at Herefish, Bullhorn. I had a fantastic automation and marketing team. I mean, it takes a village.
Yes.
So you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to make really big steps to make huge improvements. You just got to start.
Yeah. The other thing that I saw a lot of at Bullhorn was people trying to like buy a bunch of apps all at once, kind of to your point. And it's better to deploy 1 or 2 applications really good than 3 or 4 half-assed, because then they never get total adoption and sit there and don't get used. It's hard if you're a larger staffing agency. It's hard to get company-wide buy-in. We were just talking to a company that deployed one of Staffing Engine's new features, and we slow rolled it out to them, but like they got an immediate placement from it, and that spread around the office, and then now everyone's excited to use it. But if they had tried doing it all at once, then it wouldn't have been as effective.
Yeah. What I found in every, oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say, and I'm sure you guys would agree and disagree with me if it's the case, but in every role that I've felt successful, it's been iterative. Like just in my own role, it's like, okay, I'm going to drive for these goals, like essentially my personal business objectives. And I'm going to like add to the snowball here and add to the snowball here and keep doing it. And then eventually you look and people are like, dang, look at that snowball. And you're like, yeah, that is a cool snowball. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it now that I've moved from a straight individual contributor to actually building a team. I get hit up by people trying to sell me sales tech all the time. There's a lot of cool sales tech out there, but we purchased ZoomInfo, we purchased Lavender, which is a great tool for sales or recruiters. I'm happy to share more offline about that. But like I saw something else that was cool, but I had to pump the brakes because we have to make the other stuff work right first before we bite off more than we can chew. And that's important for, I know we hit on recruiter experience, but you don't want to overburden your recruiters with technology because then it won't get adopted.
I think I would say maybe, I agree with you, and there's like a tweak to it. If you're going through a net new implementation of an ATS CRM and you have layered into it all like a few extra add-ons, but it's all trained as one system.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you can get away with more. I think if you have stuff in place and there's not this whole shift in mindset and you're retraining everything, Matt,
Totally.
I think you're 100% correct.
Yeah,
so just be mindful of like where you are in your journey and what you're doing, because
to your point, Rob, I mean, the Bullhorn and Bullhorn automation example is a great one. Like, you don't want to train your people on things that the automation is going to wipe out. So like there are some things that make sense to implement them together, but just think about your workflows and pick them strategically.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think I think I've seen more success where if you train the team up front, like net new, it's got a different thing than a hey, we're adding this.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Yeah.
So we're in the process now of new. Obviously, I can't talk about it. I would agree with you, Rob. Sometimes it's just better, as long as it's a seamless experience for the recruiters, just to train them all up front on that. And then I totally lost my train of thought on the other one. So
I'm gonna jump in now.
You need some more wine.
I think that's what it is, Rob.
I was going to do a shameless
look.
I was going to do a shameless plug to staffing firms watching this, going, maybe you have a lot in place and you're trying to figure out how to do it even better. Like, let's say you're already at a pretty good place, or you're like, I'm still trying to figure it out in general. Like, hire somebody like Kate. Like, create a role.
Oh, don't let Jeff hear that.
Yeah, don't hire Kate. Not actually Kate. No. Don't do that.
No.
I'm already in trouble for this. Don't do that.
I said hire someone like.
Oh, good.
Who ideally grew up through, the back behind the scenes of like recruiting and understands how it works, but you've got somebody that has an eye on what is our technology doing and how is it leveraged to make a better experience for everybody here.
Yeah.
Don't hire Kate. Go network with Kate. She's awesome, but don't hire her. But find somebody like that, hire a role like that in your company.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, Matt, you finish.
It's never too soon to hire someone who's going to oversee your digital experience and operations. I was talking to someone yesterday, I think it was yesterday, and they just crossed the 50 million mark, and he's trying to do it all on his own. And I'm like, you need to defer this and get it off your plate and hire someone who's going to manage all of your IT and digital operations. And, you almost need someone who's got, a digital marketing person and also a digital, tech person.
Which is Kate, by the way, because Kate came from marketing.
Folks wait until like too long before they hire that type of role. And like, if you have that type of role, it helps with the technology rollout and adoption way more.
I say this a lot, Matt, 100% agree. But I say this a lot is a lot of times staffing firms want to operate in the black, so they don't take on a lot of non-producing people.
Yep.
And I think at some point, and I don't know that number in the revenue, it becomes a liability to your business because Kate's role is an amplification role.
A liability to not have it, you're saying?
Not have it.
A
Absolutely.
liability to not have it. Yeah.
Liability not to have it. It's a liability for your business because what Kate does is an amplification role. It's her job to look at it, figure out what's needed, figure out the ROI, figure out how to deploy it, and train your team to take advantage of it to get, that 10 recruiter firm operating like 100, right? So if you don't have that role, and I don't have the exact revenue number or when to deploy that person, but a digital marketing / training, I know Kate, you do a lot, / technology or technologist, that person could be the same person at a certain revenue size. Where Kate is now, it cannot be the same person. But you're in the hundreds of millions of revenue, right? So it's very different, but you can make that person marketing, tech, training, so.
And I will say, this is what Parqa does, is consult companies on this.
Yep.
Lauren Jones does a good job, of doing that, right? Of coming alongside. And so sometimes it's the outside partner that steps in when you're too small to have that in-house, and then takes a step back on that piece when you are ready.
Yeah, 100%.
I will say, whenever companies are looking for that, don't work in the black. My position was a gray position. When I started at Loyal Source, I was brought in as their talent acquisition manager and their marketing manager. I'd worked operations previously, and I'd worked all front office, front of the house positions. So recruiter, sales, manager. So it's an outside of the box position. Most people think in silos. It's IT, it's marketing, it's operations, it's delivery, and someone who can help bridge those gaps, because IT people don't speak recruiter, and recruiter doesn't speak marketer, and operations don't speak IT. Somebody who can help bridge that gap and just ask questions and say, well, wait a minute, what does this module do? It's not turned on. Or I saw a demo the other day that this tool is able to do it and we're not using it. So
I'm hearing that different brands use different tools for the exact same function.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So that's something I would definitely encourage people just to think outside the box a little bit, in terms of the person that you might need in that role could be sitting in your bullpen right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, find the curious person.
Ooh,
Find the curious person.
I think
I love that.
Find the curious person. There's so much value to that. Okay, well, we have been chatting for quite some time. This has been awesome. I actually wish that we were over drinks and that everybody was just gathered around like we're all just continuing to chat.
You've got conferences coming up, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Staffing World, is everybody going to Staffing World?
Staffing World, baby. We'll be there.
So if each of you want to leave a parting thought, it can be something you've learned, a resource you'd recommend, a story, whatever it is. Like if there's a staffing company who's watching this, whether they're new to the automation game or pretty far into it, massive company, but they're like, man, there's got to be a better way to keep doing this and make it drive ROI. What would each of you say?
I'll go first.
Sure.
Invest in ongoing training of your team.
Fun.
Love that.
I'll go next because it was my thought from before that I remembered. Technology doesn't fix processes. And I know Lauren Jones is a big advocate of this. So if you're in a position where you are blowing up your entire tech stack and starting from scratch, take the time to dig into your business processes, because that's what's going to drive your technology.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I've got two quick ones. I mentioned earlier about tech stack being a hiring tool. I don't think enough agencies really sell their tech stack when they're trying to hire new recruiters and new sales reps. I'll give you an example. We were recently hiring here at Staffing Engine, and I put out the tech stack that we had invested into the candidate. And the other company that he was considering was using like bare bone, almost no tools. And that was a big deciding factor in his decision to come join us. And so if you're a staffing agency that's invested in a bunch of tools that we just talked about, that sell that to your clients, sell that to sell that tech stack when you talk to people, because it shows that you're committed to building a really strong company that's going to keep growing. The other big thing too, I know we spend most of the time talking about candidate experience, and that's where everyone in staffing is focused because it's a candidate's market right now. But don't forget about the client experience too. There's a lot of good tools out there that are client facing, and the market's a pendulum, and there will be a time when it goes the other way too. And investing in tools that can help automate clients and their experience with their staffing agency are also very important as well, and get neglected a lot of the time.
No, it's so true. And my parting thought will be just that evangelism piece. Like, why are you making decisions to invest in technology or automation? Like, talk about it. I like to equate it back to an MBA. If you hit a point in your career where you can't get to the next level without the MBA, or you just like got this desire to keep learning, you're investing in it. You are spending time and money. When you're done with that thing, there's no way it's not going to be on your LinkedIn profile, on your resume, you're posting about it. That's the equivalent of what a lot of staffing firms do. They make the tough decision to say, yes, we're investing in this. They make the tough time investment to actually go through the process, and then they don't tell anybody about it.
Yep.
And that can, like, yeah, Matt, like you said, that can help your candidates, your clients, your recruiters, all of the above. So thank you guys for joining me today.
Thanks for setting this up and making
This
it
is
happen.
fantastic.
This is
It was supposed
fun.
to happen weeks ago, and we all got sick or sunburned or something. So
That was Rob.
I'm glad that we made it happen finally.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate you organizing.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Absolutely. So if you are listening to this and you found even one nugget, please comment below so that other people can learn from what you heard. Connect with everybody here. These guys are just all a wealth of knowledge. And I'd say, Rob, was it you who said the curiosity piece? Like, just keep being curious. Like, if you see somebody that you think is doing a good job in whatever piece it is, reach out to them, have a networking conversation. Like, they'll tell you if they can't tell you. But a lot of people in this industry I've found are really open to just sharing insights because everybody's trying to figure it out, whether it's a, $50 million company or less, or even like a $4 billion company. Like, everybody's kind of asking the same questions, just at a different scale. So keep that in mind. Like, everybody's in it together. Keep being curious. So thank you guys so much. Stay tuned for the next Fireside Chat, and we will see you here next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.